Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from September 8th, 2023. I'm recording this on, where am I recording this on? The 7th, March 7th, 2024. I want to thank you all for hanging out with me. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant. And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. We do this so that we can see what's happening with these comics after they were hot. What books should we have chased in the moment? What books should we have been patient on? So we can all make better decisions about when we're purchasing books in the moment. I feel like I said that very awkwardly this week, but you know what I mean if you've been here. So a quick update before we get into these books, because we do have 20 books to go through, so it's going to be a quick update so I can get through all of these. This video will not happen next week for the first time in a very long time. There are some personal reasons for that, but we should be back in 2 weeks. So I apologize for missing a week next week, but bear with me. We'll be back in 2 weeks, hopefully, if everything goes the way it should. So, all right. First up, we have The Killer, #1 from 2006. And this hit the list because Netflix was making a movie and they were going to put it in theaters before they started streaming it. And I think all this happened in October, maybe in November. So it was all about to happen. So this book jumped up to a $30 to $40 book, and it's still technically a $30 to $35 book, although there's only 2 sales recently. So we're gonna call it steady. I'll be back because it's on the low end of the range that it was in before, but we'll see. Not very many sales, not a lot of interest. My guess is another 6 months and this might be have moved into trap territory, but maybe not. For now, it is that managed to hold value. I didn't watch it, and I never heard anybody really talk about it, so don't know if it was any good or not. Next, we have Marvel Age #98, first preview of the Toxic Avenger. So this was back to, and we talked about this a week or so ago, or 2 weeks ago. There was supposed to be the Toxic Avenger movie. Was supposed to be out by now. It has not come out yet. But this is why it was hitting the list. Raw copies back there were going for $30, 9.8, $3.80. Now it's a $10 to $25 book, 9.8, $3.25. So the trap here is it's particularly on that raw side, but the 9.8 side's also dropped back fairly decent amount. But yeah, I've never been one to be interested in the preview collector, but there are definitely people that do, but this book is taking a step back. We'll see what happens when the movie actually finally comes out. At least I don't think it ever did. All right, with that, we're going to start moving into covers. We got several covers this week. We got Sonic the Hedgehog, Endless Summer, #1, back on the list for the second week in a row. This popsicle cover. Last week it was a $50 to $80 book. Now by this point, it was a $75 to $80 book, so it was basically right at the top range of what it had been before. Now it's a $45 to $55 book, which, so for a book that got the triple ratio, to fall back to basically ratio, not a huge surprise. This one definitely turned into a trap. But still, a 125 going for $50 on average, that's really good, just not the crazy prices that people paid initially. Next, we have Vampirella Monthly, #20 from 1999. This hard to find Bruce Timm variant, which I'm not sure how hard to find it really is. There's always listings and always several of them, but it is a little bit hard to find. It's a very popular Vampirella cover either way. Raw copies were going for $200 back then. 9.8 hit $495. Now it's $140 to $300 for the raw, but the average is really right around that $200 mark, right where it was before. And that's where most of the sales are, with a few higher, a few lower. So we're going to call this steady worth it. It's been right in the same range. We didn't have a recent 9.8 sale to compare to, but all those raw sales are right here, right around the range that it was before. Next, we have Immortal XMen, #15, the Joshua Swaby 1/25. That's probably not how you pronounce that guy's name, but either way, 125 was going for 30. Not even double ratio. That's not a very good sign typically. Although, one of the things I found, I may have to start changing that because this book is now a $20 to $45 book. So basically, on average, right there at that $30 thing, I haven't noticed that's been a little bit of a pattern. Is some of these ones that haven't actually taken off that much have managed to hold there just above ratio. But it's not enough of a pattern. Like, I'd say more often than not, those books still end up below ratio, down around $15. So it's not enough of a pattern to say that's the new thing. If it's sitting around ratio, it's probably going to hold. I wouldn't say that yet, but there definitely has been a few more of these that have managed to hold, even though they didn't really take off initially. Maybe this one takes off in future weeks, and I just don't remember that. But yeah, this one, for now, is steady and worth it. It's still going for right at that same value. Next, we have SpiderGwen Annual number 1, the Ji-Hung Lee 1 in 100 Virgin variant. This 1 in 100 was going for 150 to 200 back then, which is pretty good for a 1 in 100. Anytime it's approaching double ratio on a 1 in 100, you're doing pretty good. But this one has backed up a little bit. Now it's a 90 to 170 book with most of the sales under that $150 mark from before. 9.82 to 225, so not very much higher than the raw copies were going for back then at release. So we're going to call this down and I'll be back. Very pretty cover, but not one that's held as much. There's a lot of these Ji-Hung Lee, SpiderGwen variants over the years. He's done a lot of her variants that have had some decent value. This is another one. It's doing pretty well overall, just not quite as good as it was back then. Next, we have Nort's Illustrated Swimsuit Edition, number 1, the Pablo Villalobos 1 in 25 of Wonder Woman. You guys know I absolutely love this cover. When they reused it for the foil of Wonder Woman 5, I ended up grabbing it, which I hate that they reused it on a different book. I don't like when they do that, but I was a sucker because I wasn't going to pay the money for this one. Back then, this was going for raw copies, were going for 100 plus. Now it's a $65 to $100 book, 9.8 around 100. So it's a down and I'll be back. So this was up. It was actually on the list last week at 60 to 75, or it wasn't on the list, but it was a $60 to $75 book in its first week after release, and then it jumped up higher and made the list. Yeah, I absolutely love this cover, but it's definitely down and I'll be back. Maybe it'll continue to creep down a little bit, or I may just have to break down and get it, even though I have the foil at some point. Next, we have Uncanny XMen numbers 141 and 142. So the Days of Future Past storyline, and these both were hitting the list. They put them on the list together because the facsimile editions were coming, which was causing a spike in sales. So that's why they put it on there. It was a spike in sales. It wasn't a huge spike in price, just a small one. Back then, sets of both raw copies were going for around 200. Individuals for each was going for 60 to 80, which was like, to make a lot of sense because you can buy the individuals then for cheaper than the sets, but that's what they were claiming price wise. Now raw sets are 150 to 200. Raw individuals between the two books, basically $50 to $100 is what you're kind of looking at. We're going to call this kind of a down and I'll be back. You could definitely find some deals here. You want to call it steady and I'll be back. I wouldn't argue with you too much. But this one is definitely, these are great books. Their value is didn't change that much then, and they're going to have value all the time because it is a favorite X-Men storyline. Next, we have Gotham Academy, number 1, the first appearance of Mia Maps Mizuguchi. This is a character that's been rumored to be like, they've had her in some like alternate future stuff as Robin, but she was the reason she had the list here is because she showed up in the new Birds of Prey series that was coming out. And we got a future version of Maps that had come back in time and was going by the name Meridian. And so that was why this was hitting the list. There was some buzz about the Birds of Prey book, which I will say, the Birds of Prey book has been very, very good. But back then, this book was going $10, 9.8 going 58. Now it's a $5 to $10 book, 9.8, 45 to 50, which is kind of where this book is sat. So we're going to call this down and I'll be back. It just kind of returned to what it was. It didn't really jump beyond the range it was in previously when it hit the list. Next, we have Battle Chasers, number 1, the first appearance of Red Monica. So there was a lot going on with Battle Chasers last summer. We finally got kind of the end of the story arc, the initial story arc. He finally wrote it and published it after 20 years, so we got through issue 12. Would love to get more, but I don't know that we're ever going to get it. But this was hitting the list at this point. Was during all of that, we got, as that was wrapping up, we got rumors there was going to be a live action adaptation that caused this book to hit the list. Raw copies 20, 9.8, 175. Now it's a $10 to $25 book, 9.8, 125 to 150, which is kind of where this book is always kind of sat. Maybe a little higher than where it's always sat. But reminder, you got to get the preview to get all the other characters' first appearances. Number 1 is just Red Monica's first appearance. We'll see if this ever becomes anything. I know it's been a game and some other stuff, but I'll believe it when I see it, even though I really like the story and these characters. But next, we're moving into MCU news, and we had Savage She-Hulk number 1, first appearance of She-Hulk, hitting the list after there were some rumors of a season 2. I think some of that's maybe been kibosh at this point. I don't know. $30 to $110 back then. 9.8, $380. All of which are just crashed from the pre-show hype. I know a lot of people hated the show. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was different, but I get it. I thought it was closer to some of the comics. Maybe you didn't like the humor, but whatever. Anyway, now it's a $30 to $100 book, 9.8, $325 to $435, which is basically, this is kind of where this book is now. It kind of fell, it crashed from the crazy high. It got up to over $1,000 for 9.8. It fell back down post show, and now it's just kind of settled into where the book is worth. All right. Next we have Moonight number 1, the first appearance of Khonshu, first ongoing series. Basically, there's rumors that we were going to season 2 here, and we didn't. Still no confirmation that we'll ever get a season 2. Raw copies $100, 9.8, 275. I should have probably double checked that average there, because that was a Tom average. That might have been one of those that was just off a little bit. Now it's a $15 to $50 book raw, but 9.8s are still right in the same range, 250 to 350. Calling it down, and I'll be back. Maybe I should have called it steady. I wonder why I didn't double check the average, basically, on that $100. So, but anyway, the book is kind of where it sits at this point. So, next we have Dazzler number 1, first appearance of, or first solo Dazzler story or series. Dazzler's first series. Back then, 15 to 25, 9.8, 200 with all the Taylor Swift rumors. We still get those rumors. Now it's a $15 to $30 book, 9.8, 150 to 250. So steady and worth it. This book is right where it was at back then for the most part. Still rumors she's going to appear in Deadpool 3. I'll believe it when I see it. And I will believe that it actually changes the value of this book when I see it as well. So, even if it happens. All right, we still got a bunch of books left. We got Prelude to Deadpool Corpse, number 1. First appearance of the Deadpool Corps, which is, I think at this point, was just Deadpool and Lady Deadpool. And this is basically because, again, Deadpool 3 rumors and the multiverse rumors. Back then, raw copies were only going for $5, just a big spike in sales. 9.8, though, did spike all the way up to $100. Now it's a $4 to $10 book for raw copies. It's a steady, and I'll be back. That $5 average back then is basically what it is now. It's basically $5 plus shipping on eBay. Is really what you're looking at. Next, we have Prelude to Deadpool Corpse number 2, the first appearance of Kidpool. And basically, there was rumors that the kid from the Ryan Reynolds Adam Project movie was going to be Kidpool. And back then, so raw copies were going for $8, a big spike in sales. Now it's an $8 to $25 book for a raw copy. So we're going to call this up and worth it. Most of the sales are above $10. Most of the sales, $15, $20, $25. Although there still are $10 sales, $8 sales. But so we're going to call this one up and worth it. Still specking on Deadpool 3. We'll see how well this does once that movie goes. Although at these prices, it's not really a terrible investment, even if it's maybe paying the premium. All right, that was all the MCU books. We still got 5 books left, and they were all Star Wars books. For the most part, well, we have one that's not, but then the rest are all related to the Ahsoka show. But the first one is Star Wars: The High Republic, number 5, the first full appearance of Vernestra Rowe. Some debate on when her first appearance actually is, but she was kind of confirmed for the Acolyte show. Plus, they were getting a Halloween reprint of her first full appearance, which of this book. And they were calling it her first full on that Halloween reprint, even though you see her in, I think, 2 books before this. But anyway, raw copies back then were going for $8, 9.845, so not a huge price bump here, just mostly a price bump in sales. Now it's a $4 to $15 book for a raw copy. No recent 9.8 sales. We're going to call this a steady and I'll be back. You could call it steady and worth it. The book is basically a double cover book. Which is, pretty typical for a small key. It is a character I really like from the High Republic stuff. We'll see how she gets adapted in the Acolyte. Next, we have Star Wars Jedi of the Republic, Mace Windu, number 5. This is the first cameo appearance of Ahsoka in Marvel canon. So this was hitting the list because of the Ahsoka show. Raw copies back then were going for $25, 9.870, which is like a 9.8 of this book at one point was like around $300 because in the run up to the Ahsoka show, not even to the run up, but in the initial announcements that the show was coming and all that kind of stuff. Now it's a $15 to $25 book, 9.8, 40 to 90. So this is another one you could maybe argue steady, I'll be back versus down, I'll be back. But raw copies are consistently probably 20 or below. So we're going to call it down and I'll be back, even though 9.8's kind of over the same range as they were before. Next, we have Star Wars Kanan, the Last Padawan, number 1. The cameo appearance of Sabine, Hera, Ezra, Chopper, all of which appeared in the Ahsoka show. Back then, raw copies were going for 40 to 50, 9.8, 150, way down again from the previous peaks on these books. Now it's a $15 to $25 book, 9.81 to 150. So still down even more as we've moved away from the show. These books are very cheap. It might be time to upgrade my copy. Have to think about it. And next, we have Star Wars Kanan, the Last Padawan, number 6. Their first full appearance of Sabine, Hera, Ezra, and Chopper. Back then, this was still going for $100 plus raw, 9.8, 350. Now it's a $30 to $100 book, 9.82 to 225. So another trap, getting borderline dumpster fire here on like the raw side. But yeah, another book that might be time to consider an upgrade. We'll have to see. And then last, we have Star Wars Heir to the Empire, number 1, first appearance of Grand Admiral Thrawn. This one was hitting the list. Back then, newsstand copies were going for 500 raw, 9.8 newsstands, 15 to 1600, 9.8 direct, 900, and now it's a $500, a $50 to $200 book for a newsstand raw. 9.8, 950 to 1100, direct edition 9.8, 550 to 700. So yeah, giant trap here as well. As even though Thrawn's going to be a big part of some Star Wars stuff going forward, this book is backed up now that we've moved away from the show. And even back then, it was still, again, way down from the initial announcements. So that is this week's list. Your quick reminder that I will be no video next week for personal reasons, life reasons. Things happen, but hopefully in 2 weeks we will be back. I look forward to seeing you guys then. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you in 2 weeks. Later. Bye.